Perhaps one of the most controversial game genres is the immersive sim. Those games offer a new way to dive into game worlds by encouraging creative gameplay approaches, including those unintended by the developer. Hi, by the way. This creates an immersive effect, placing you into a simulated environment that reacts diversely to your actions. There are also high interactivity within the game world and non-linear level progression that are achieved through the game mechanics rather than dialogue choices or character leveling. But the key contradiction and issue of this genre is that throughout the history of such games, they have rarely managed to become financially successful. Almost every moderately expensive and well-known immersive sim has been labeled a financial flop. Usually the main culprits cited are either technical problems at launch or poor marketing, where publishers simply don't know how the hell they are supposed to promote this type of game. This leads to situations like Prey 2017, where one of the best modern immersive sims was advertised by the publisher as just a casual evening space shooter. Dishonored's 2 entire ad campaign, similarly, revolved around action, and even more action. But when an intrigued player finally clicked the icon on their desktop, they encountered gameplay that's, well, immersive sim, punishing nearly every mistake and overall featuring the slow-paced gameplay typical for immersive sims. By the way, Rafael Colantonio, the lead developer behind Prey and Dishonored, shared quite a few fascinating insights in one of his podcasts about the development history of Prey and the challenges it faced during promotion. So, if you would be interested in a video about these amazing games, please let me know in the comments. I would be more than happy to return to Tell Us One and gladly make a video about it. But overall, you could easily make a separate 10-hour essay, thoroughly breaking down all the reasons and consequences behind immersive sim failures, but here is what I'm getting at. AAA immersive sims are dead. The clearest proof of that is the shutdown of the legendary studio Arcane Austin, the team behind the equally legendary and, in my opinion, criminally underrated Prey that I have mentioned earlier. Of course, the failure of Redfall played a major role in that, but honestly, that topic has already been picked apart from every possible angle by anyone and everyone with an opinion. And let's be real, the problem with Redfall wasn't that it was an immersive sim. Putting Redfall aside, the last major immersive sim came out nearly 4 years ago. It was Deathloop by Arcane Leon Studios, and its reception was, let's say, not the best. By the way, quick side note, I really enjoyed Deathloop back then. I was so damn hyped by all the trailers preceding its release that I even bought it on day one, blitzed through it, got the Platinum trophy, and then replayed it a couple of years later after buying it on Steam. But even Deathloop was marketed as a next-gen first-person shooter from Arcane Leon, and not as an immersive sim. But that's beside the point. We stopped at the thought that big players in the market are afraid of releasing new immersive sims because of how niche they are. And here comes the tastiest, sweetest, and most satisfying part. Because if AAA studios don't want to release something cool, indie developers step right up to the plate. After all, creating a truly excellent immersive sim doesn't require a huge budget as much as it does persistence and genuine love for detailed, systemic gameplay. And there is one game I've been following closely for the past few years, a project that demonstrates how indie immersive sims can be seriously awesome games. Gloomwood. It beautifully combines elements of another genre I adore, survival horror, with that thorough, detailed approach characteristic of immersive sims. Given my love for both genres, there was no way I could miss the chance to try this game and spend at least a couple hours in it. And minus 15 hours of my life. But honestly, those were some of the best and brightest 15 hours I have spent playing video games in recent years. Of course, there were a few caveats, and we will definitely talk about them too. But how the hell did this humble pixelated game manage to grab my attention for such an extended period of time? I will give you the answer to that at the end of this video. First, I will walk you through everything that is currently available in the game. Then I will break down its gameplay and immersive elements, and do my best to convince you why you absolutely need to, at the very least, pay attention to this title. Today, I'm telling you about Gloomwood. Gloomwood was developed by two indie developers, DIllon Rogers and Dawid Szymanski, and published by New Blood Interactive. If you have been in the indie scene for any length of time, some of these names will definitely ring a bell. For example, Dawid Szymanski is widely known as the creator of Iron Lung, Butcher's Creek, and of course his most famous work, Dusk. As for New Blood Interactive, I doubt they need much of an introduction. these guys consistently release hit after hit. Fallen Aces, Blood West, and of course, Ultra Kill. Gloomwood itself was announced in July 2020 at the PC Gaming Show with the reveal trailer, and it immediately received praise for its atmosphere, tone, world building, level design, and gameplay, though it also drew criticism for its unfinished state and difficulty level. We'll talk more about the difficulty later, but DIllon Rogers himself admitted in the interviews that due to his inexperience, he sometimes went a bit overboard with enemy difficulty, which had to be rebalanced in later patches. So the game launched on Steam on September 5. New Blood Interactive co-founder Dave Oshry explained that the timing of the release was chosen specifically to avoid overlapping with CD Projekt's showcase of new cyberpunk content. This resulted in Gloomwood becoming #1 on Steam's top 10 for 24 hours. So, in this game, you take on the role of a certain doctor who has been captured somewhere on the outskirts of the city of Gloomwood. This city, by the way, was recently overtaken by a mysterious plague. Opening your eyes, you find yourself at the bottom of the slaughter pit, surrounded by blood, fish, and corpses. Some guards are staring down at you, casually mentioning you will soon be transported to the city in a carriage. Apparently, your chances of survival are not looking too great, unless someone decides to help you out, for a price of course. And right on cue, a mysterious stranger appears and helps you escape from captivity.
Oh, how convenient.
Besides saving your skin, this stranger briefly outlines the path you should try to follow if you plan on making it out alive. Specifically, you will need to reach the lighthouse. And that's it. Right at that moment, as the prison door swings open, the sandbox gameplay begins. So, what exactly does the game have to offer? Well, first of all, a powerful and obvious homage to the Thief series. By the way, referencing these similarities with Thief, the developers even went so far as to buy the domain thiefwithguns.com for the game. But aside from Thief, the developers also drew inspiration from System Shock and my beloved Bloodborne, thanks to its Victorian era vibe and atmosphere that basically screams the town went to shit. But what surprised me the most was the substantial inspiration drawn from the Stalker.
And there's also a little bit of, because David and I really like it, there's also a little bit of Stalker in there too.
Oh, brilliant, yeah, no, big fan of Stalker.
I already praised Stalker heavily in my previous video about Dark Souls 2, but I will gladly do it again here. It's a phenomenal game, just like all the others I have mentioned above. If you haven't tried it yet, I seriously recommend giving it a shot. But for God's sake, please stay away from the horrible enhanced edition and just play the classic versions instead. And one more quick note, just so we don't have to come back to it later. I'm not a fan of aggressively begging for subscriptions, comments or likes under my videos, but sadly it's kind of unavoidable. For a small channel like mine, each of your likes, comments, and especially subscriptions hugely boost how many people will actually see this video in their feed. So if it's not too much trouble, I kindly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you decide to subscribe too, my happiness will know no bounds. For you, it's just a second of effort, but for me, it's enormous motivation to keep making new content. Thank you in advance. And now, let's move on. One of the charms of immersive sims is the total freedom they offer in gameplay approaches. Accordingly, nothing stops you from quietly sneaking past every enemy, sticking to shadows and outsmarting them, or from going full guns blazing, annihilating everyone in spectacular explosions and gunfire. But remember what I said earlier, Gloomwood isn't just an immersive sim, it's also a survival horror game. And one major characteristic of survival horror is the severe scarcity of practically everything, from ammunition to healing items. This is where Gloomwood really shows its unique personality, the emphasis on stealth. Our protagonist, the Doctor, is frankly quite weak. Calling him a real combat unit would be generous. Sure, as the game progresses, we'll find some tools to help us deal with enemies, but throughout most of the gameplay, we have two main friends, darkness and silence. Darkness is straightforward. The darker the corner you're hiding in, the less visible you are to enemies. By the way, I forgot to mention, at the beginning of the game, upon escaping captivity, we are handed a ring, and it's not just a fancy piece of jewelry, it actually shows us how illuminated we are, which is extremely useful for stealth. The brighter it shines, the more visible we are. Speaking of darkness, it's also worth mentioning the possibility of extinguishing lights through various methods, and the environment also plays a big role here. Take the distant lighthouse, for example. It's not just a background decoration. Its beam of light actually rotates, periodically illuminating the fishery area where we begin. This can, and most likely will, create some unpleasant situations for you. Actually, the developers had quite a few issues implementing lighting exactly the way they wanted. One of their primary goals was to allow players to destroy or disable light sources. For instance, in Thief, you could extinguish torches using water arrows. In Gloomwood, there is the choke bomb, specifically designed to snuff out torches. And as I mentioned, the developers had trouble implementing these lighting mechanics. They even reached out to several Unity developers, describing their issues in detail, only to receive answers like, "Why don't you just use the dynamic lighting system?" To which the Gloomwood developers had to patiently explain what kind of game they were making and why everything needed to look like it came straight from the early 2000s. Now, let's talk about our second best friend and simultaneously our worst enemy, sound. Earlier, I mentioned comparisons with Thief. Here, just like in Looking Glass Studios' masterpiece, the amount of noise you make depends entirely on the type of surface you're moving over. Generators, waterfalls, and other noisy surroundings become your best friends on your stealthy journey. And believe me, in Gloomwood, sound is truly crucial. A single thoughtless pistol shot or a bottle tossed carelessly can lead to some seriously disastrous consequences. So before throwing anything to distract an enemy, think twice, because there is never any guarantee that only one guard will hear it. Sound also helps us to track enemies. Just like in Thief, the guards here love to mutter under their breath, sneeze, cough, or maybe even fart occasionally. This allows you to spot threats in advance and control the situation overall, since there is no Witcher Sense or minimap to conveniently show you enemies' positions. In my opinion, this further deepens the immersion, and it's definitely a cherry on top of an already outstanding game. By the way, DIllon Rogers talked a lot about the way sound and other game mechanics were created in a fantastic documentary on the NoClip channel. I strongly recommend watching it, especially if you are interested in game development or just enjoy learning how a game like this is put together. And since we are already talking about sound, and remembering this is an immersive sim, it's important to know that we can use sound strategically, not just defensively. The game often places us in front of locked doors that we can't open without a specific key. Usually this key is hanging on the belt of some guard patrolling the area. You could try to sneak up and grab the key, but sometimes that's just simply not an option. And here is where the immersive sim freedom and our massive brains came into play. Nothing stops you from knocking on the wall or smashing a window to attract the guards behind that locked door. The temptation to find out who's causing such noise is usually too strong for them, so they will open the door and rush out to investigate without a second thought. And as they leave, of course, they will forget to lock the door behind them. Then you casually stroll through that now open door, smugly marveling at how smart and clever you are, and how beautifully you just outplayed the game. Though, to be fair, since this is an immersive sim, you don't even always need to unlock locked doors. If the door is wooden, you can simply smash it down or burn it. That's absolutely a valid option as well. So anyway, stealing stuff is something you will inevitably have to do, since iron doors are not gonna unlock themselves. But you are not just stealing keys, you will also want to swipe all kinds of useful items. In Gloomwood, every location is packed full of valuable items and hidden stashes worth looting. In order to survive in this grim world, you will use literally anything. Even an enemy's severed limb might turn out to be useful, but your primary loot consists of weapons, ammo, healing items, and money. As I have already mentioned, Gloomwood clearly takes inspiration from the survival horror genre, specifically from Resident Evil. Our protagonist prefers stealth and operating from the shadows, because in direct confrontation, he goes down in just a couple of hits. Sure, firearms are definitely the most comfortable way to deal with enemies, but first, you need to actually find these weapons, and second, ammo itself is extremely scarce. By the way, speaking of ammo, as someone who has spent more than a few hours in Tarkov, I absolutely love the ammo checking animation here. But I digress. All these items are not just rare, they also take up precious space in your limited suitcase inventory. Well, at least money occupies a separate slot, just like a trusted sword cane. And this brings us to inventory management. You have to carefully arrange your weapons and ammo, valuable items to sell, healing items, and quest-related items, all into your suitcase. Suddenly you are faced with that classic Resident Evil dilemma, what to keep and what to discard. By the way, a couple of fun facts about the inventory. One of the lead developers of Gloomwood loved the inventory interface in Resident Evil 4, which was cleverly represented as a suitcase. At the same time, he was a big fan of the inventory system from Arx Fatalis, where you could drag items directly from the inventory into the game world. Ultimately, they decided to combine these two approaches, and the result turned out fantastic. Your inventory is an actual physical object. Transferring items from it to the game world feels incredibly smooth, natural, and immersive. There is no pause screens, no loading, no buttons. Everything happens seamlessly in real time, and your character actually remains vulnerable during this process. But I should also mention separately that you will need to gather special vox cylinders, which allow you to save your progress at certain locations. And on that note, we smoothly move into discussing the game's difficulty. Whether or not you have these vox cylinders available depends entirely on the difficulty you select. In Gloomwood, there are 4 difficulty levels, each offering a uniquely different experience, so every player can find their comfort zone. The most basic differences between difficulties involve how many items you can find, enemy alertness, and damage dealt or received. But the biggest feature here is definitely the saving system. On the lowest difficulty, you can quick save whenever you like. Starting from the Half Moon difficulty, saving becomes available only at special phonograms. Again, an obvious homage to Resident Evil. And finally, on Blood Moon, the hardest difficulty, saving is limited to the same phonographs, but now requires you to use those vax cylinders I mentioned earlier. Personally, I play and recommend you Gloomwood specifically on Blood Moon. Now, I'm usually not a big fan of the highest difficulties in games, because usually they tend to just boost enemy health and damage, turning them into tedious bullet sponges and making the experience unknowingly grindy. But Gloomwood approaches difficulty in a completely different way, resulting in a genuinely interesting and engaging experience. Firstly, you become afraid of enemy encounters and carefully count every bullet, because your last save might have been a long-ass time ago. But to be fair, the developers isn't just trying to torment players. In most cases, you will find at least one vox cylinder somewhere near each phonogram. You just need to pay close attention and search your surroundings. Actually, saving in immersive sims is an interesting topic because saves often become the exact thing, killing immersion. If you abuse quick saves and replay one moment dozens of times until it's perfect, you are no longer experiencing something unique, you're just memorizing the optimal sequence of actions. In my opinion, static save points in Gloomwood solve this problem very elegantly. We are clearly not a death-dealing machine or a brilliant ball assassin doing everything perfectly. Each of us inevitably screws up sometimes. We'll make noise, throw bottles inaccurately, or accidentally alert guards. In those moments, you have to quickly adapt and improvise if you don't want to replay a large chunk of the level. Gloomwood heavily favors slow, thoughtful gameplay. You carefully explore every location, jump at every suspicious sound, and cautiously take down guards one by one. Because otherwise, you will quickly find yourself back at the phonograph, forced to clear the area all over again. But there is an important thing to mention. If you think the static save system isn't your style, but you still crave the challenge and resource scarcity, the game has an option allowing you to enable quick saves even on Blood Moon difficulty. Personally, I didn't use this feature, but I can easily imagine players who would prefer to turn it on. I wholeheartedly support this flexible approach by the developer, as everyone should play the way they personally enjoy most. Next, I would like to talk about the locations. For me, this is the absolute best part of the game, something I have plenty to say about, and precisely what captivated me during my playthrough of Gloomwood. The level design and structure here closely resemble the original Deus Ex and Garrett's adventures in the Thief series. Interwoven pathways with no strictly linear road from beginning to end. This becomes especially clear towards the end of the game, when we finally enter the city of Gloomwood itself, but more on that later. Our adventure starts at Kroop's Fishery, and even this initial area perfectly demonstrates the intricate depths of Gloomwood. As I have already mentioned, our main goal is to reach the lighthouse, and since this is an immersive sim, the game genuinely doesn't give a damn about how exactly you accomplish this. Any creative approach to navigating the locations is encouraged here. you can painstakingly stealth your way through, sniffing out every dark corner and silently taking down the numerous huntsmen lurking around. But if confrontations are not your thing, you can skip them entirely. Just jump into the water and swim straight through the area. Doing this, you will completely bypass the first location and immediately enter the Waits Company mine, the game's next area. And honestly, this is classic immersive sim gameplay. Why struggle through a challenging and intricate level if you can just cleverly skip past it instead? And while this approach is completely viable, please keep in mind, especially on your first playthrough, that by doing this, you'll miss out on tons of valuable items. At the very least, the place is loaded with hidden gold coins that will come in handy later, ammo, useful items, and various secret spots containing fantastic loot. One of these, at the very minimum, contains a revolver, which you will desperately need in your upcoming adventures. Speaking of safes, to open them, you will need combinations which can be discovered in various ways. Immersive sim veterans might be tempted to try out the iconic code 451. Well, you would be absolutely right. It's the universal combination for opening every safe in the game. Sorry for the spoiler, but it's just a beautiful tribute to the classic. Besides that, the area has plenty of other delightful details. How about the hidden stash behind the waterfall? Seeing such a secret immediately warmed my heart. It just shows that developers deeply respect classic gaming traditions. And when you stumble upon a table with cheese wheels, you can't help but smile. On the roof of one building, there is a mysterious tower that the guards cannot enter, and in the workshop, there is a basement without a key. You can reach these locations, but only if you're clever enough and have the right tools at hand. Every single location in Gloomwood is packed with similarly thoughtful details. Later on, these interesting mechanics and neat touches become even more frequent, and your freedom in approaching areas will only increase. I would especially like to highlight the second half of the game. Once we finally reach the lighthouse, the game obviously doesn't end there. Instead, the lighthouse becomes a temporary hub area. Interestingly, it recently received an update adding a new mechanic called research, but honestly, I haven't had much time to dig deeply into it yet, so let's not dwell on that right now. Next, we set out directly for the city of Gloomwood itself, where the epidemic is currently raging. The journey into the city, and the city itself, is, in my opinion, one of the coolest and most varied sections of the entire game. Even the entrance into the city is itself a fantastic puzzle that can be solved in multiple ways. You can go full stealth, carefully killing every enemy, to rotate a cannon and blast open the city gates, or you could find a key item in a hidden stash and carry it with you through several locations, using it later to unlock an alternative road into the city, completely bypassing every enemy, stressful stealth sections, and so on. Unfortunately, this moment was spoiled for me in videos I watched about the game, but I certainly won't do the same to you. Trust me, if you manage to pull off this maneuver yourself, the feeling of satisfaction alone will more than compensate for any hassle caused by carrying this item with you all this way. And the market, the first location that greets us in the city, is honestly one of the best areas I have ever seen in any immersive sim. And no, I'm not exaggerating. This area contains a massive number of buildings, each of which you can enter and explore thoroughly. Often these buildings are also interconnected, forming one big intricate puzzle. One building introduces an entirely unique mechanic, the alarm system. As you are wandering through the city, you will inevitably spot a gun shop. And considering ammo is usually in short supply and you would love some heavier weaponry, naturally you will want to peek inside. And in this shop there are several weapons display cases, but there is a catch. If you try to open or break them without the proper key, you will trigger the alarm. And then, be prepared for every imaginable enemy from all nearby buildings to rush at you. Good luck surviving that mess. Other buildings are sprawling mansions filled with hidden loot, enemies, and intriguing mechanics. If you are clever enough, you can find extremely valuable items inside. And what's amusing is that solving this puzzle doesn't exactly require genius-level intellect. Even someone like me, who gets lost behind two trees and can't remember the multiplication table, managed to realize that in one mansion you just have to pull 4 levels to open a passage downwards. Later on, we'll stumble upon a small shop run by a familiar merchant. The very same person who freed us from the cage at the start of the game is more than happy to sell you all kinds of useful stuff. Suitcase expansions, ammo, pistols, and other items. He's also quite willing to buy all the junk we have been carrying around in our pockets this whole time. Additionally, in this cozy little shop, this wonderful gentleman gives us our own private room to rest and save our progress. You can even stash your loot safely in either a safe or a chest. To be honest, I never understood the difference between them, but apparently you can store things in either without worrying about them despawning. For example, at one point, while exploring the city, I stumbled upon a warehouse full of canned goods, so naturally I borrowed most of them and stuffed them into my stylish chest. Quick side note here, enemy corpses and various drop items do not disappear when moving between locations. I didn't exactly test traveling huge distance away, but after passing through 2 of 3 locations, bodies and dropped items still remained exactly where I had left them. The same goes for defeated enemies. They don't respawn in their original positions, so if you clear out an area, you can safely return there later without the fear of suddenly being ambushed. This is yet another great example of how Gloomwood emphasizes immersion. You simply trust the game more when it remembers your previous actions and takes them into account later on. I mentioned it briefly before, but the world in this game is technically open, even though it's divided into separate locations. You can literally walk all the way back from the final location to the very first one, and once you unlock the merchant shop, you will even get the option to use fast travel through special portals, simplifying backtracking and exploration significantly. These portals are unlocked for us by a mysterious lady. We don't know much about her, but it's confirmed that all local huntsmen work directly for her, and she was the one who wanted us captured and brought into the city. Exactly why, though, is still unclear. Moreover, the merchant strongly advises against interacting with her, claiming that all the horrors happening in the city are caused by this woman, but we'll touch on that a bit later. Aside from all the immersive elements I have already described, there is one more, and it might just be the most important of them all. Let me illustrate it using one particular location, the Wade's Company mine. When we first arrive at these mines, the place is deserted. Reading a note pinned to the wall, we learn about some weird-ass creatures lurking deep inside the tunnels. Creatures that forced the workers to abandon the site entirely. An electrified fence was even put up in the entrance to keep these monsters inside. Knowing all this, our next task is to shut off the generator, plunging the entire mine into total darkness. Moving forward in pitch-black tunnels, we finally encounter them, those dogs. God, I fucking hate dogs in games. And now we have to crawl through all these damn caves without getting spotted by these vicious bastards. Well, what can I say? Gloomwood is incredibly atmospheric. While the first few areas don't exactly instill fear, since we are mostly dealing with huntsmen who honestly are not that scary. Later on, enemies become increasingly twisted and horrifying. After all, a plague has overtaken the city, and many inhabitants no longer even remotely resemble humans. In this regard, there are several notable locations, one of which is particularly infamous, the Slaughtered Goat Tavern. And let me tell you, this place had me tense and laser focused. It turns out the short pass across the nearby breach is blocked, and the only way forward lies directly through this very tavern. Before entering, we overhear several extremely terrified hunters discussing some horrifying shit going down inside this barricaded building. And these hunters clearly don't want to step inside. It's obvious they are scared shitless of something. Sneaking inside the tavern's basement, the first thing you will notice is the absolute, deathly silence inside. Then suddenly upstairs, you hear the screams of a hunter getting brutally destroyed by some creature. And that's when it hits you. You realize there is no other way forward. You are going to have to face with that thing head on. In an interview, DIllon Rogers mentioned that the devs knew most players would stealthily backstab their way through the entire game. So they deliberately added the enemy that players wouldn't be able to quickly dispatch, forcing them to get creative. The whole tavern sequence was also designed as a tribute to classic survival horror games, featuring a roaming enemy that players need to hide from. But unlike something out of Resident Evil 2, this monster isn't immortal, something that Shotgun hanging conspicuously on the wall hints at very strongly. But even beyond this moment, the game has plenty of other scenes where the developers ramp up the tension and isn't shy about using some clever, organic jump scares. Overall, Gloomwood excels at building dread. The game never hesitates to shatter your sense of security, making it clear that it can scare the shit out of you whenever it pleases. Before you encounter the next horror, you are always carefully prepared. Through stories you overhear, scattered notes, terrifying sounds, or even horrific scenes you witness firsthand. And when you finally find yourself standing exactly where some poor soul was devoured moments before, the emotions are simply indescribable. Very often, before stepping into the next room or entering a new area, your brain starts running calculations. If something isn't there, do I have enough bullets to handle it? Will I be able to hide or run if things get hairy? And seriously, do I really need to go in there at all? By now, I hope at least some of you watching this video have become genuinely interested in this project, an incredibly atmospheric game that masterfully immerses you in its environment with survival horror elements, fantastic replayability, and intricately designed levels and surroundings. And yes, the game is indeed amazing. But there is one huge but that might scare away many potential buyers, and that is early access. Yes, the game is currently unfinished and is still under active development. Story-wise, as of right now, the game looks like this. You wake up at Krupp's fishery with no idea what's happening. Someone saves you and tells you to head for the lighthouse. Along the way, you learn about a mysterious epidemic that has consumed the city of Gloomwood. Once you reach the lighthouse, you are instructed to head to the city itself, where you will meet that mysterious gentleman waiting for you in his luxurious shop. Additionally, a mysterious lady contacts you, clearly eager to meet you somewhere within the city. Upon arriving at the shop, you will receive a new objective. Visit each district of the city and collect a seal from each one. Collecting these seals will open the way to the Countess Manor, where you will be able to put an end to her. However, only 2 of these 5 districts have currently been implemented. So there is still a development of 3 additional city districts and the Countess Manor left ahead. Given that major updates come approximately every 6 months, it doesn't exactly paint the brightest picture for the game's final release. At the end of 2022, the developers promised a full release within a couple of years, but unfortunately a definitive release still seems a way off. And in my humble opinion, monumental projects like this are better experienced from start to finish, all at once. This brings us to the game's main issue. Any unfinished or not fully realized mechanic can always be excused with the idea that it will be expanded in the future areas. You know, promises of new enemies, weapons, mechanics, and so on. But those are merely words at this stage. Personally, I have zero doubt that Gloomwood will eventually reach full release, and when it does, it will be absolutely amazing. The question remains though, is it worth your time now, knowing you will lose that magical first-time experience with a fully finished game? And yes, even at its current state, Gloomwood is incredibly polished and delightful experience, enjoyable to dive into. Even right now, completing everything at the highest difficulty can easily take 10 to 15 hours. But as much as I adore this masterpiece, I unfortunately can't wholeheartedly recommend buying it right now, unless your goal is specifically to support the developers, which is totally cool with me and I even suggest you do that. By the way, a quick word about those developers. I highly recommend following DIllon Rogers, the game's lead developer, either on his blog on X or on his YouTube channel, where he regularly posts short videos explaining upcoming mechanics. And I also want to express my sincere appreciation and gratitude to the game's artist, Blasko, for graciously allowing me to use his stunning artwork as a thumbnail for this video. I will leave their links in the description below, make sure to give them a follow. And returning briefly to Gloomwood for a few closing words. For me, discovering this game has been one of the most vivid gaming experiences I have had recently, and there was simply no way I couldn't share that with all of you. I genuinely hope I have succeeded in conveying that excitement. I also sincerely hope that the future of Gloomwood is bright and the game receives its official release sooner rather than later. Funny story, I actually finished writing the script for this video about a month ago and set it aside. Went to play Dark Souls 2, since you guys quickly gathered enough likes on the videos about the first Dark Souls. And guess what happened? Exactly. The developers released a massive update called the Research Update Part 2, adding so much new content that it easily deserves another 10-minute segment of this video. But I will leave exploring all that new stuff to you. Also, DIllon Rogers has already announced on his X account that the next update will send players toward the towering aristocratic manors of Hightown to collect the next seal from the city bank. So even though the game remains in early access, its development continues successfully. I am completely confident that someday Gloomwood will see its full release, and I will gladly make another extensive video praising the fully finished product. I also genuinely hope that developers further flesh out the game's lore and story by then, because the potential here is absolutely enormous. Well, that's about it from me. Thank you all so much for watching. I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. Any interaction with this video is hugely motivating and encourages me to keep creating content for you. Please let me know down in the comments if you would like to see more videos like this, and if so, on which game. I am extremely curious to hear your suggestions. And no matter when you stumble across this video, know this, right now I'm already working on the next one for you. But if this happened to be the last time you ever hear my voice, well, thank you deeply for the time you've spent here. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon.